thank you so much for being here with us today. Can you please
Thank you.
introduce yourself to the
Yeah.
audience?
Thank you, Mayi, for having me. This is a pleasure. That's because I just love to talk.
Me too.
Yeah, good. So I'm in good company. Well, let's say a little bit about me. If you can understand someone who likes to talk, what do I do? I'm a university professor, and that wasn't enough. Being in front of classes, So years ago, I think it was 2014. I was fed up with teaching. I'm still doing it, but I had to escape, and I opened a YouTube channel and created Christelle Martinet, who is, my children call me Christelle Martinet. Both of them, they call me Christelle Martinet. My husband calls me Christelle Martinet. All my exes called me Christelle Martinet. But so what do I do there? I started reading cards and only showing my hands because I was thinking, I couldn't have my students see me. And I never put my face. And so at a certain point, a consultant said to me, you should go live. And I thought, oh my God, no, I can't go live. And then I did. And all of a sudden, I realized that people want to put a face to the voice, and it's more personal. And I have to tell you that at the beginning, I wasn't ready for all of that exposure. I used to cry when I read the things that people wrote to me underneath my videos. It was terrible. And so now I realize, it's my channel. Just get rid of it. Just get rid of it. Well, I didn't realize that. And just like when I started teaching, I used to go out of the class crying because someone would say something to offend me.
Right.
But so then I have that started, and it started a whole new set of services that because I'm a third generation psychic, and I do a lot of channeling. A lot. That is the mainstay of my work, really. And I work with soul therapy, what I call soul therapy. I clean houses of negative energy. I clean people of a negative energy. And there's a big shifts there, a lot. And since COVID started, that's when the crazy amount of negative energy kept moving back and forth, shifting, not directed from one person. It was just shifting from healthy carriers, let's say, people who were unwittingly carrying negative energy to you from someone else. Craziness. And so here I am, and I started my I know I too, like you, have a podcast, and I started it. Because I'm working on a book, and because I thought, I have to read it. I have to read those chapters. And that's how it started. And now here I am, because I wanted to it's so important for me to get other people's ideas, whether they're asking me their questions or whether I'm asking them the questions, because you learn so much. That's the thing I like about this the most, the interviews.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, that you learn so much when you're interacting with other people and when you're putting yourself out there. And a lot of people are so afraid to put themselves out there for whatever.
I told you I used to cry. No, really. But then I guess you realize everybody is only human.
Yes.
We're only human, I mean, I have a funny nose, but they have funny eyes, and, I have pimples, or they have creases. I have wrinkles, or my hair is short, and, so what?
My hair sticks.
Your hair is green. Yes.
So how, that is so interesting. And before we go into the superpower and empowering people, how did you, from being an interpreter, because I find that so interesting, how did you become a psychic, medium, medical, intuitive, and energy healer? How did you transition, and what are the advantages, to working across different industries? Because I'm a photographer. And
I remember you told me that. That's right. I know. Well, look, a colleague of mine, a woman, a fellow psychic, I brought that to her. I said, I know sometimes I feel like no one's going to believe that I do these things. And she said, honey, you never have to limit the light that you have let it shine, just let it shine. You could do it, All right. So how do I do it? All right. You mentioned interpreting, and I'm a university professor. I've been teaching conference interpreting with it. This is a habit, wearing these, wearing earphones where one language goes in and the other comes out, like you see in the United Nations interpreting booths in the booth, or today after post-COVID period behind a computer screen, but still in the same fashion. You hear one language and you speak another. It being a psychic, which happened to me very young. I was about 4 or 5 years old when I first started seeing images and seeing, and writing about it, journaling about it. What happens is when you see things, okay, I'll give you an example. I was in church. I used to go to church. My family is Roman Catholic. I was baptized, but I'm not a practicing Catholic today. Of course, I have the Bible, I read it, but I have my own source of inspiration, divine inspiration. Okay. I would go in the afternoons when no one was there. And I knew there was no one in church because we lived right around the corner from the church, St. Michael's Church. I would sit there in the pew and I would literally see figures crossing the altar, going from left to right. And they were just like they were on stage and they were enacting a little scene. And I was watching and I could see them, arguing or shaking their hands or saying, come on, let's move, just as if it were a story. Then I would go home and I'd write about it. I'd write it. Sometimes I'd write a little story, a paragraph or 2 paragraphs. Sometimes I'd write a poem that took the shape of what I was seeing. If it was a tree, the shape would be in a tree. And so that's how it started. But the thing is that why I'm saying this is that when I went home and started writing is an interpretation, because of course I saw it with my eyes. If someone was next to me, they would see it with their eyes. And we don't have the same heads or the same thoughts. So it's always a personal interpretation. About psychic work, it literally is the same thing, because if I channel, and I often do that on my YouTube channel, if I channel the spirit, let's say, I think the first person I channeled, the first soul I channeled was Lady Diana. It happened, I think, 3 years in public. I'm saying in public, 4 or 5 years ago, actually. And I woke up and I knew I had to do it. And I was traveling for a conference somewhere, and it was so dark in the room where I was, in the apartment that I was. So all you see is the shape of my head, all the sun in the back. I was in Australia, I think. And I started talking and doing it. And I realized after I watched it afterwards, and with the questions that people were asking me, how do you do that? She's not saying, that's not her. That can't be, and all of these things, all of these comments, I realized that, of course, I was doing the same type of work that I do with the interpreting. I hear something because I typically hear things and I see things. If I have my glasses on, I can see them. And clairvoyance. And and then I interpret what I'm seeing. And for example, once I had, there was an Indian Bollywood actress who died when she was very, very young. And when she came, I remember, because many times I don't remember what I say. I'd have to go back and look at the video, but I remember specifically because she was there right with me. She was very tall, very thin, and she had a bodice, a dress that came down to a bodice under her breasts and long. It was light bluish, yellowish, and flowing. And I could see her dancing. And I was explaining this to the public, and sometimes I go back and I look at it and I'm thinking, people think I'm on drugs. I'm high and I'm like this normally. So that is, walking, let's say working across industries, it is a pleasure. It's a pleasure. There's an expression in Italian. It is a cross and I can't remember now. It's a good thing and it's a bad thing in the sense that you sense, you get the feeling that you never have enough time for one or the other. You would like to do more in one and more in the other. But then if you think of it, if you step back and you look at it, for example, in your case, you're the photographer. That is a very powerful mechanism and a means to see things. And it's the same as you talking to someone or reading about their curriculum or reading about their life, you see them. And in your mind's eye, you imagine what they even look like, and what they could, how they could move, but these are not just two hats that I have. I'm a writer. I'm an author hat. I have that author hat. And I am a Feldenkrais practitioner, which is, it's all about movement, awareness through movement. And I work with people's voices. And so there's this let's say the most important things in my life are moving. I dance, moving and speaking, moving and communicating. That probably are the two things. Whether I do it in internet, whether I do it in the classrooms, whether I do it on paper or in interviews, that's it. And you can see I'm just moving.
That's usually me. I'm very animated when I'm talking, and I remember somebody said, "Oh no, but that's so annoying," and it's like then they try to quiet. I was going to go there next. How did you find your voice in that space, like not giving into that need that you felt to express yourself, and like you said, making those videos on YouTube and just showing your hands? When did you say, no, you know what, this is my voice? How did you find that voice, and how do you help people find their voice and own it?
Yeah, one of the episodes of my podcast is called Finding Your Voice. Precisely, I don't remember what episode it was, and I was struggling on paper in one of my chapters when I said voice is the actual tone, the register, what words to use. Do I want to talk academically? Do I want to dumb it down? Do I want to talk as if I'm in a conversation? Finding your voice. And that is one of the most difficult things. Really, I think that is the most difficult things for anyone to do, women or men. Let's try some examples. I think it was 3 days ago, I was talking to a scientist. I had a scientist with me, a real big scientist, one of those but is so humorous and plays with words. And I had him as in an interview, and he started talking about certain things. He talked about the biological origin of success. And I said, well, for me, success is one of the things that brings pleasure to people. Would you agree with that? Oh, yes. And so then he goes right into this. He says back in, and it was almost incomprehensible. I did understand, but then I said, look, come on, dumb it down for me. He said, dumber than this? He said, and he had a way of not being able to probably make it, not make it, thinking that there are people around listening that couldn't understand,
Right.
And finding the voice is, for me, even through my practice of moving, the voice in movement, that's what, and movement in the voice, is that you have to resonate the sound. First of all, pragmatically, literally, when we're talking about making a sound, means that you have to be aware of where the air passes in your body. And it uses the entire body, the hips, of course, the diaphragm and the throat, but you have to know and be aware that you're using your shoulders.
Body
right?
language.
Yeah. But then when it comes out, what are you actually going to say? And I think that's what you are referring to. How do you find your voice? Where does it come from? When do you say, basta, now I'm going to speak?
Right.
It's when, for me, it happens when, at the university, I started arguing with everybody. People were being promoted. Men. Just think of it. Men were being promoted. I wasn't, and I had more qualifications. And I started screaming at my boss and his boss and going, and I thought, this is not me. Let me take a step back. They're inviting me not to do anything. They're actually inviting me to just relax. And so I thought, okay, I have to enjoy myself. That I always do things for enjoyment. Why would I go and work with something that is giving me trouble? And so
Right.
that's what started my YouTube channel. And so
Mm.
the key for me, at least, is pleasure. If I don't like what I'm hearing of my own work or my own voice, I can't do it. I won't do it. I won't even, I'll throw it out. I'll throw it out. And it was in the case of the scientist who I was talking to, it was so interesting because all he needed was a little push and say, he was talking about intention of little tiny cells and how intention and how they come across failure. And I said, well, that means if we all sit back and have no intention to do anything, we'll be okay, right? Oh, yes. And he got so excited and he went on and on. But I guess it's a matter of loving what you're doing. And not doing something you do not like. And on the one hand, and I say this for everyone listening, I understand that it could be a luxury to do what you like to do. But let's face it, I have to put food on the table. I'm a mother, and I could not afford not to do some of those things that I didn't like to do.
Right.
But then you find you find a creative outlet, and if there is a way that you can create something, make a pot of clay, write a poem, paint, throw paint on the walls, anything that will give you pleasure to look at. So, I see that you too are a sewer, just like me. It's something that you see that comes to life when it's made all of a sudden. Right. And that, I think, will help you get your voice, because the voice comes through even in the artifacts, even in the creations that we make, that we do, we fashion,
And that is so satisfying.
It is so satisfying.
It is. Yes. And usually, and that's one of the reasons why I started the podcast, not just to, because I love talking to people, and that lights me up. And I couldn't understand why certain things I was avoiding, and how can I go beyond just a one-on-one, or like in photography. I usually love when I'm doing one-on-one, because I get to talk to the person, I get to know their stories, I get to imagine so many things, and I can like be 100% with them, even if it's a group setting, like a family or whatever the thing is. Maybe it's an event. But I found that my spark was when I was talking to them. So how can I go beyond this? And podcasting, my goodness.
Yes.
That found, like.
How long have you had a podcast running?
Well, actually, the podcast has been, I decided to finally do the podcast at the end of 2020. I was like, that's it. I did COVID. A lot of research.
You were in COVID.
Yes. I was like, okay, I did a lot of research during COVID, and I'm like, okay, that's it, I'm ready. And it's so hard when we talk about the voice, because a lot of times we don't like our voices when we're recording. And it's like, ew, we don't like the sound of our voice, because we don't feel like, we start rejecting ourselves.
Well, I that's one of the first things I tell my students. Bring in the recording. You have to bring in a recorder. And if you don't like your voice the first time, suck it up, because it's, we all didn't like our voice the first time. You'll get to fall in love with your voice. The key, what don't you like about it? Change it,
Right.
That's it.
Right. So let's talk about power, because when we were talking about, at the beginning, I said, I love empowering people and to step into the power. And I was so excited talking to you. And you said, we don't empower. We are super powerful.
Yeah, we have power. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about how do we reconnect with our own powers, and what is power anyway?
Okay. All right.
How does
Well,
this
all right. Now,
influence relationships?
all right. Now, I'm coming from a linguistic perspective, a social linguistic perspective. And so when I talk about power in language, I talk about those little things that help us come closer to a person or keep them farther away. And for example, in the Italian language, just like in the Spanish language, I believe in the French language, they have a way to say you that is formal. And in English, they just say you. It's me and you. So
Right.
the English is a little more different. So in English, we need things that are for example, the nouns. If I say, Maya, we really are powerful, and that I'm including you in that. And if it's different if I said, Mayi, I'm very powerful, and you must be a powerful woman as well, right? It's different. That's different. So
Right.
if I say, what is power anyway? It's the there are many different kinds. There's military power, there's
Right.
political power, there is ideological power, and we get the idea sometimes. If you said to somebody, what is power? They wouldn't know how to answer. But like pornography, the legal definition of pornography, power when you see it. And pornography when you see it, in the sense that the way a person speaks and the following that they have. But if we take that and we bring it to women, whatever it takes a woman, if they want to undergo some kind of face surgery to make them feel good with themselves, feel themselves whole, then they should do that. Whatever makes them feel comfortable in their skin will bring them a sense of power. Of course, then ruling, going into a room and not even having to say anything and having everyone turn their heads, means that you have some kind of light that they're following, or you have an attitude. In normal language, they say you have an attitude and you know what you want. Sometimes it's the way you carry yourself. Sometimes it's the clothes you wear. Sometimes it's the look in your eyes, the courage to look people right in the eyes. But when we were having the conversation and we were talking about empowering women, I thought it was interesting. You do have power. We do have power. The problem is getting others to understand it as well. Because what women usually find is that, and what women usually think, is that they need to speak a man's language in order for them to understand. And we have our own language. Think, Mayi, women, their menstrual cycles, they can lose blood from 3 to 7 days and they don't die. I mean, that's pretty powerful, and that's strength. That's a really strength. And people should be reminded of that strength. I don't want to go into, the menopausal or the before the menstrual cycle, but we've done our dues. We've gone through that, we do go through that. And so women, another thing that women are very, very strong at, and one of their superpowers is the fact that they bond. They have the strength to bring people together. It starts in the family, and it is brought on to the workplace, what I call the queen mother. Queens are usually the executive type of person, and they manage an office, and they know how to allow people to do what they like to do. But for her, because the queen, usually the image of a queen, the archetype of a queen is that in a colony, in a bee colony, the queen is nurtured by the bees and prompted to then become a queen. And then the queen nurtures others on the workplace, at home. And so, our figure, and it's difficult because I laugh when I say that, because I remember being 15, 16, thinking, boy, I wish I was a boy. Sometimes they have so much more fun and they could go out, and then after I grew older, I thought we have the best of both worlds, because literally we can do whatever we want. Argentine tango. I dance Argentine tango. In the first lesson, they said the woman has to follow the man's lead. And I thought, I can't do this. I can't. I'm never going to do it. I'm never going to do it. And then the woman, there was a couple, an Argentine couple. She comes over to me. She says, don't worry. We have a lot of options. The most important option is to say no when they invite us. You just turn your head and you don't have to dance with that person. And I thought, oh. And that when she said that, it gave me a little bit of hope. But
I want to know what separates women who successfully create breakthroughs and with the ones that struggle. So when those negative voices come knocking on our doors, like, hello, the self-rejections and all those negative, whether it's coming from other people, whoever, it usually comes from within. When those negative voices come, right? How do successful women, how do they respond to them?
I call that shadow boxing, when the negative voices come. And a shadow in psychology, it started with Carl Jung talking about the shadow, the soul's shadow. And there is, let's say, in my mind, let's say, I'm telling you my ideas, of course. So for me, I have to know, let's take tango. I have to know in tango, the role of the man. In English, in Italian, it's the male role and the female role. In English, they say the leader and the follower, which is nice. It's better, I think. So I have to know what the male role is in order for me to be able to do my role as well. Right. So they're two different things. So let's say that I'm here and I want to write a book. All right. Say, I want to write a book. I have so many things. I have so many notes. I have so many pictures, everything ready to write a book. And then I look, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's so difficult. And then I have to go to a publisher and all of that. And even if I wanted to self-publish, who do I think I am? Who's going to read it? You start all of these doubts. And I call that the shadow. And the shadow is that part of ourselves. So there's the light part. So here we are talking and chatting and so happy about what we're doing. And the shadow part is that side of us that is always there to, in my mind, yes, come knocking on the door and the negative voices, but it's also a voice that gives us balance. Just think, if the shadows weren't there, we would be flying in the air. I mean, we would just take off. And if we have the shadow there, what we need to do is embrace that, because it's there for a reason. It gives us input in some way, because sometimes it doesn't even happen even during the day. It happens actually in our dreams. We have nightmares of falling, constantly falling, or getting, in a terrible accident, or never being able to run after losing things, and that's the shadow telling you that, yes, there's that's too, but that's also what we have to work toward. Because if you thought, let's go back to my channeling, right? My channeling. How would it be if because when you talk about negative voices, you get a lot of negative souls come in, and I have to be able to push them out. And there's ways that I do that. But what is possible for me, straddling the people of the living world and the people of the spiritual world, is that there is death. All right, we get that. We all have people who have died, loved ones, not so close, very close. And we know what it feels. Grief is very, very serious, and it's devastating. But we all have had that high, that life's high, that wonderful feeling of joy. Now, you could not understand that joy if you didn't have that shadow, if you didn't have the other side, because it's called, in philosophy, at least, it's called distinguishing one thing from another. I know there's white, there's black, this is dark, this is light, and I can tell how light this is in relation to this, and the world is dynamic. We live our life, let's say living, is dynamic. So what we're aiming for is not constant bliss, because that's impossible. Life is dynamic. So our equilibrium is dynamic, and it's made of the shadow and it's made of the light as well. So the more we understand that, the better we'll, they knock on the door. Okay, I get it. Open the door, come in, tea, you want some tea, and that's it. Let's think about it now, and then take some notes and get it. Because if you want to do something, it's not really a matter of your passion. It's not how passionate you are, because you asked in the beginning, you said, what separates women who successfully create breakthroughs and ones who struggle? If you think about it, the woman who creates the breakthrough was once struggling. You can count on that. She didn't just break through,
Right. And they still struggle.
And they still struggle. Yeah.
Is that inaction that I was trying to get here? Because sometimes, let's say we stop ourselves when the negative voices, but we just stop and we don't do anything about it. Whereas other women that create breakthroughs, how do they do that? That they do get scared. They do get that, shadow that you were talking about, but they just go ahead and do it. Like,
okay, all right. Obviously we're not all the same. We know that, right? I have this color hair. You have that color hair. You're different from me. Your glasses are different. So we know that. Okay. Right. But the thing is that, everybody, it's a matter of timing. It's a matter of preparation. It's a matter, because very early in my teaching life, I understood, and with my children, that timing and the type of intelligence that you have is so unique.
Right.
That when you're ready, it's the field, that movie with Kevin Costner, he made a baseball field for the souls that were coming to play, right? When the field is ready, they will come, and when the time is right, you will break through. Right. But you have to, and there's no beating. The thing that I contest, and I'm really gets me so angry, is when people are hard on themselves. Right. That's really, it's isn't life bad enough? Why do you have to be hard on yourself too? You should know that we all have a right to exist. We all have a right to happiness and pleasure. We have to remember that. And we all have a right to be heard. Of course, there are certain relationship bonds that have been struggling because the people feed off of each other for the negative energy that they feed each other. And that is a unique type of bond in itself. But once you break away from that, because all of a sudden you say, this is hurting me, I'm tired of having pain. I'm tired of being told that I'm nothing. I'm tired of being, of thinking that I'm worthless. I'm just tired of that. God, I go back to the bleeding. You haven't died. And all of that blood kept coming out. You have to remember that. And we nurture, we give, we feed people. And we all know that men are different from women. And I'm not saying this is not a criticism toward men, obviously. We can't live without them. And I laugh, but it is something. It doesn't have to be shouted at the rooftops. Women all around the world have live in a much more difficult situation. In some countries, of course, it's much more difficult. And even in far advanced countries, there's still in lower numbers with respect to men, how successful women are. And many times it's a question of education. But even in societies where the level of education is very, very high, the traditions holding women down are still very strong, And for me, the question is this. Let's take the example of a young woman, let's say 22 years old, 22, 25, has just gone through a university cycle in a country, I don't know, not the Middle East, let's say Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, Bangladesh, highly educated, has even gone abroad for education, comes back, and the people who have given her life, her parents, and I'm saying a woman, her parents are living in a place where she doesn't recognize as hers any longer, because she was somewhere else and she learned another thing. But still her roots are very much tied to these two parents, and her choices will depend on the relationship between the parents and her in terms of what she wants to do next. And so she doesn't have to fight guilt and all of those things that will hold her back. So it's really you are a product of your environment, but at the same time, your voice is still there. Let's say this woman is an engineer and she needs to stay in her country because at that time, one of the parents may be ill, or they both may be ill, or there's not very much money going around, or they need her to provide for them, let's say, okay? That will put her in a place that will root her seriously. But then let's say, where does she get her voice? How many outlets does she have? Today, with this medium, she could do anything. She could open her own radio show. She could write a book. She can write 10 books. She can start a movement, association, an NGO. She can work miracles at a distance. And women don't have to forget that. That's they have not to forget that, because the voice is theirs and they can speak wherever they are.
Right.
Yeah.
What is your perception of beauty?
That's a great question. That's a great question, because I've thought about that over the years, about myself and about others. And I like to watch people and I like to look people, and I'll tell you what I mean. In Italy, when I travel for the most part by train. I travel by car as well. But if I go from one region to the other, I like the train ride because I can do some work and I can write, And so that means going to the station, a lot of traffic, or going to the airport, a lot of traffic with people. And so you see people on the streets all the time. And I found at I don't know, a long time ago, that when I'm walking down the street, I seem to measure myself. I can see myself in relation to the figures that are in front of me, the size. Once my sister, who had moved to Italy, because I lived in the United States before I came to Italy, she said to me, all right, before you come and visit, Claudia, think small. Think small. The small coffee cups, the small spoons, you've got to think small. And it's true. And so I would measure myself as I look at other people. And that's one way of seeing yourself, getting the actual image, measuring yourself. But in terms of beauty, that's a whole other thing. That's a whole other ballpark. Beauty, I thought about that myself, because we women we watch other women more than men. I think we look at other women more than men. I know that for a fact. I see other women watching other women, and men are looking somewhere else,
Right.
But what I find is, and I see what would attract me to a person, what would make me want to go near them and talk to them, is when a person is relaxed. When they speak to you in a relaxed way, when they're smiling, when the position of their body is relaxed. I'm thinking of the beach now because it's here in Rome. It's summertime, and when they could be standing or lying, and it doesn't matter what they look like, but the way they carry themselves and the way how comfortable they are with the harmony of their movement, the harmony of their, of their language, and the calmness that they have, that calm spirit that they project. And that for me is beauty. That is, it's the top, it's tops for me. That is beauty for me.
Nice. Yeah. So let's switch it up a little bit with body, the body image, because I feel like, in my line of work also, I'm always trying to tell people how beautiful they truly are. And I
Mayi,
want to show them.
Mayi, look, I would pay you thousands if you could make me look gorgeous. Did you ever hear that?
It's like, like that's why it intrigues me, like their perception of beauty, it's in a celebrity. And I'm like, but you are beautiful. Have you seen yourself lately in the mirror? Like truly see yourself. And so a lot of the times where I think people stops them from, we were talking about success, in the career, the business, as a mom, as a woman, as a wife, is like their perceptions of themselves. It's just completely out of balance, out of whack, out of, and I've been there. I'm it's not like to say I look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm a supermodel. Not in that sense, but loving yourself, like looking at yourself in the mirror and say, wow, I woke up today. Do you think
Yeah, I get it.
that has a lot to do with how successful they are in their career?
Well, let's say that in teaching the job, the profession of interpreting, okay,
Right.
there are very many different ways to do it. One is with earphones. When you're in a booth or when you're behind a computer, you hear it and you speak. The other type of interpreting is called consecutive, and it's usually done for press conferences out of the booth. So you have a pad and a pen, paper, and usually the press, the television stations, the radio, they ask questions to whoever you're accompanying, and you take notes and then you relay it. And so you are no longer hidden. And I spend a lot of time giving feedback to students and people in general, to tell them how what they project on the outside. I'll give you an example. For many years I taught translators, interpreters at the anti-drug unit. Okay, the anti-drug unit in Rome, and top-notch interpreters and translators, top-notch. One of them, one of the youngest, she was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, bright smile, dark hair, beautiful. She was the typical interpreter. I always said to her, if they had to take a picture of an interpreter, I would take a picture of you, a suit, pantsuit, not too thin, not too, large, very professional, and these beautiful eyes and winning smile. When we did this type of interpreting, we would take the notes and we would then relay it. They would perform. I had to tell her, I said, look, put on your glasses, put on a pair of glasses, because the people watching you are just looking at your smile and looking at your beauty. They're not listening to you. And so she put on her glasses, and it was easier for an audience to then interact with her. And what I find, and so that is an image for her job. Of course, right. If she's going to go to a party, I mean, she's going to take it off. Of course, she's going to wear a halter, nothing on her shoulders is going to be something different. And so I think that there is beauty, a perception of beauty has a context. It always has a context. If I go to the swimming pool to do 40 laps, I'm not going to wear a two-piece bathing suit. I mean, that's just out of place. I'm going to wear a one-piece, something that I could, go through that water very quickly, And so, and even if I go into a room where there will be a certain amount of politicians that I have to work with, I'm not going to wear a short skirt, or if I'm wearing a skirt at all, it will be with stockings that are a little darker, heels that will not be very high. So you have a certain type of image that you would like to portray, because you don't want people, putting on the make, you don't want somebody coming up to me, hey, baby, you don't want that in that context, and so beauty has, if tastefully, I'm talking about my taste, but I think that if you want to stick out for something, if you really truly want to stick out, you don't need to be counterculture, but you need to make yourself shine. What is it about you that is important in that context? You go to, all right, tango. Let's take tango. I'm going to a tango, milonga. It's called a milonga, a tango evening. And I've got these beautiful shoes. All right. Okay. I have these beautiful shoes. I don't want people looking at my feet. That's what they do. People look at women's feet because that's where all the beauty is. But I can't go there in a hoodie. You know, I can't wear that. I need to wear certain things that will make the movement flow within a dance floor where there are a lot of other people and we're going in counterclockwise. Everybody's moving that way. And so we have to be in a certain way in a certain time. Having said that, Mayi, I'm not saying that you can't wear whatever you want. No, but I think you really need to consider where you're going and what you're doing.
There's a time and a place for everything.
Right. And I think a beauty comes out of you regardless of what you wear, actually.
Right. And I believe also it's a mindset, because when you, like if you're going to a meeting, and let's say a networking meeting, and the way you dress, the way you look, the way you stand, your body language will make a big difference. But the biggest problem that I find is that it all starts here. Like if you don't shift your mindset about, like the way you feel and it makes certain shift, then however you dress, wouldn't you agree that it wouldn't change anything?
No, I don't think it would. There are things that happen when you're in public, though, and it happens. And this, we have to bring that in, not only because beauty also is like you said, is in the mind, is in the head, but what other people see are obviously what we look like.
Right.
But we can pierce through anything that anyone thinks using our eyes and using our voices. That will floor anyone. The way we use our eyes to look at people and is a very powerful tool. That's one of the most powerful things we have. And our voice is very, very powerful.
Eye contact. Yes. But we have to be very careful with eye contact.
Yes, I know. Italy is one thing. The United States is another thing. Yeah.
So being unapologetically you, to me, means being true to who you are and what you believe in, staying true to your core values. In other words, not seeking approval for showing up authentically, being yourself in order to blend in. Is there anything that you are going to stop apologizing for, or something that you stopped apologizing for that took you until the next level, that helped you in your next level in your career, in your business?
Well, it's an interesting question, because one thing I will never apologize for ever again is my psychic ability. Mm. I could remember as if it were yesterday, then husband would be in the living room saying to the children, she's at it again. She has those cards in her hand. Mm. And I went in there and I said, yes, I have the cards in my hand. So what? Then they saw how successful my YouTube channel was. And they didn't, of course, obviously they don't believe the same things that I believe, but they see what I'm capable of, and they see what I do. And I'm not saying, and I'm talking about black magic, but it's the power of your thoughts, really, the power of your convictions, the power of you moving forward. And I will not ever apologize for my psychic ability, ever, ever, ever again, ever. I used to, but I will never do it again. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. That is awesome. And I think that's when we step into our power.
Yeah.
Because we are, probably, like you said, goddess.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. I love that. Claudia, how can people connect with you?
They can connect with me on I have two websites. One is www.christellemartinet.com, and the other is my name, www.claudiamonicelli.com, which is the writer, author, and movement services that I have. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.